For the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities.
Hello and welcome to episode 23 of That's a Shame. I am, as ever on a Wednesday, Declan.
You're Declan on not Wednesdays as well, of course.
Sometimes,
giving that impression.
Sometimes, yeah, no, I do like to keep a level of consistency throughout the week.
That's good. Good for the mental state.
You,
I am Isaac on Wednesday and all days.
exactly. And how are you,
Lovely to
Isaac?
be back. Oh, you know, life. It's just one big helter-skelter of fun at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, you're leaving us for a little while, aren't you? You've just revealed.
Well, yeah, in a way. I'm just going to Disneyland for 3 days. That's pretty good, actually, isn't it?
You bastard.
It does unfortunately mean that we're going to have to cancel a guest appearance that we'd both not forgotten about so much as just failed to draw back into our kind of memory over the last few weeks. I don't remember really signing up for it.
No, me neither.
But it turns out that because I'm away, Declan doesn't want to do it on his own. Cowardly, some of our listeners have said in the last few minutes. I've just got a tweet here from... I don't want to say the username. It says, Declan should do that appearance. Isaac would if he were by himself. And then there's just a scowling emoji. So
Wow. Well, our listeners and indeed your attempts to shame me into doing this are as futile as they are pathetic.
well, we tried.
Exactly. But no, congrats on your trip to Disney.
Thank you.
We hope you have a good time. Of course you will. To
Oh,
Disneyland.
yes. And it shan't be interrupting our schedule.
No, of course not.
We're going to be pre-recording the fuck out of it. We're doing about 30 episodes in the next day. It's going to be powerful.
But I mean, I am personally a little bit offended that, you know, we've known each other for 3.5 years now. And this is the second time you've been to Disneyland without me in that time. How many more could there possibly be?
Well, I'm going to be honest, it's lots.
Oh, fantastic.
But, you know, we'll play it by ear one day. Let's not rule it out.
So you're saying that even I, your co-podcast host, someone that you once ran, maybe planned, I don't think there was much planning, but ran and drank your way through an entire Disney night with.
Yeah, true.
I'm not worthy of your
Look, I'm
company in
not saying you're
Disneyland.
not worthy. I'm just saying that when you're suddenly invited at a last minute to Disneyland, you can't go worrying about the baggage you're going to take in the form of other people. You just have to barrel on through straight into Mickey's giant castle.
Straight into that land of happiness.
But yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, it's not interrupting the schedule. That's the key point. So
Exactly,
don't worry,
no.
anyone. And I won't come back all like French or just talking about Mickey Mouse all day. It'll be more of the same, which is a blessing and a curse. Yeah. But let's set up this episode because, of course, it's one of the few that we've... it's not one of the few that we've teased the content of. It's one of the few that we've teased and then followed through on.
Yes.
The promise of.
Definitely.
We're not usually big on the follow through.
No, we're going to be going on to talk about a very interesting time in our lives when we were involved in the wonderful ChristianChat.com.
Scene.
It's not exactly a subtle name. It is exactly how
No,
it
it's
sounds.
on the tin, isn't it?
But I had a little news story for you
Okay.
before we barreled into it.
This is a sharp change in remit for a show that has previously foregone any sense of current affairs.
Well, I suppose it's not news in the sense of public news.
Okay.
It's more just a story
Cool.
that is new.
Loose.
So it turns out that one of the teachers at the school where I used to work is an absolute Father Peter.
Oh, no.
Well, he at least kind of wanted to be a Father Peter.
Oh, that's even worse in some ways.
I know.
Aspiring to be
exactly.
a criminal.
An up-and-coming Father Peter.
When I grow up...
Yeah, he got sort of kicked out, as it were. sent to the old jail.
I was going to say, do you think we should like contextualise that in case people don't know what it means to be a Father Peter? But it's so blatantly transparent that it's some kind of like sex crime.
Yeah. Well, Father Peter, you should probably explain Father Peter very quickly.
He was a ex-priest of my grandma's who's now in prison for molesting underage boys. The end.
The perfect topic for any comedy podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this teacher, he wasn't quite as guilty as that, it seems. But you know, he was getting close. Looked like perhaps readying himself, maybe,
Okay.
which is a shame.
He was putting in the groundwork.
Yeah, building up the foundations. So he got dragged away, but just before, well, I say just before, potentially just before, maybe immediately after, another member of staff bought his car off of him.
Okay.
I say possibly immediately afterward because you would imagine that it was probably going cheap at that point.
It's covered in like blood or something.
No, it's not covered
in evidence.
It's not covered in anything approaching evidence.
Oh dear.
But
Not
he
anymore.
probably doesn't have a whole lot of use for it in the time being.
No, you can't drive around prison, can you?
No, they
They're
really
pretty strict about that.
they frown on that.
They've really cut that back.
So he bought this car. Anyway, this member of staff is leaving the school. He's going to another school in Manchester, I believe it is. And the tradition is...
Shout out to our Mancunian fans.
What? As is tradition at the school, there's, you know, for all the members of staff that are leaving, there are kind of goodbye and good luck cards on the staff room desk that everyone can go and sign. And my mum was telling me that a member of staff who is previously thought to be not humorless, but by no stretch of the imagination a comedian,
Right.
had written in this other teacher's card, "Good luck up north. Will you be taking the nonce's car with you?"
What a question.
Like, what? It was just out of nowhere.
That's
like,
great.
This person, you know, lovely though they are, has always been somewhat of a more tedious character.
A dullard.
Yeah, a more not
A
necessarily
dreary
dull.
beige plate of stale mustard.
Lugubrious, I think, is probably sort of closer. That kind of slightly boring, slightly grumpy. But yeah, just out of nowhere.
It turns out they've just been workshopping this one line.
They've been waiting for
the
this
last
to happen.
decade.
They were the one who tipped off the police, I reckon, about.
Or maybe
about
they write, maybe it's just circumstance, like fortunes have aligned, and they write that in every card they ever send to a departing teacher. And it's previously just been met with confusion and some minor charges of harassment.
But today
stars aligned.
was his golden hour when finally.
Really shone.
Yeah, so I thought that you might enjoy that. I mean,
Yeah, well, no, thank you for
he could
keeping
only
me in the loop there.
He could only say, "Well, yes." I mean, I am.
Certainly am. It's my last memory of him.
Yes. So yeah, Father
there you go.
Peter's as far as the eye can see.
And it leads us quite nicely, with the whole religious angle, doesn't it? Straight
Exactly.
into... That was almost like you planned it, which I don't know, did you? Be honest.
Yep.
I don't believe you, but we'll leave that where it lies. I have tasked myself with introducing the concept because, like many aspects of not just friendship with you, but friendship with most people, I tend to not remember too much of what goes on. Maybe I sort of sound like I'm nearing the end. But it's more
no,
a
but
question of just, I'm very in the moment.
We've spoken about this before, though, haven't we? That
Yeah,
like
exactly.
things that aren't directly related to your continued existence,
They fly immediately out of my skull.
gone. They don't.
And it's not that they're not there, it's just that it takes some gentle cajoling to
Yeah.
resurface. It's kind of a streamlined process, yeah. So Christian Chat was really, for me, the second iteration of the same basic concept of a Christian chat room. And it all came about in a rather roundabout way during my time at sixth form. And have you heard of a website which is a treasure trove of shame, possibly more than any other we've discussed thus far, just on a purely numerical basis of how much shame lies within? And that website is allpoetry.com.
Yes,
You're familiar with it?
I know of.
So like the name suggests, it's a home to poetry and poets of all genre, quality, more importantly, experience. And for some reason that I don't quite recall, I became, well, not just me, but like my then friendship group. I've made it sound like I've since dispensed with them, which is only partly true. We became quite obsessed with allpoetry.com and made an account, right, called Ben Gordon, which is there to this day. You can go and find it. The profile picture is of a baby eating Nutella.
Good.
It was, I believe, set up as an old man character. He was in his 70s, and he just wrote poems. Initially, it was just like a one-off joke thing. But what kept us coming back to All Poetry for the best part of a year, I think, overall, was the community aspect. Because you could write anything, any bullshit, and sometimes as many as like 20 people would get in touch with comments about their interpretation of the verse and their sense of like you as a writer. And this was just, it's something that I've always really enjoyed, is like, I think the reason I bring it up is because it's the same fundamental premise as why I enjoy christianchat.com.
Right.
Because you're inhabiting a character that draws out like genuine responses from people just around the world who are just living their lives, and you get this snapshot into a kind of, I don't know, just an understanding of the world that is so very different. So to illustrate this, I'll read you one of the shorter poems, or I'll read extracts from it anyway.
Yeah.
It's called The Mystery of the Frog and the Butcher. I remember fuck all about why it was written, but I recognise that a good part of it was often quite a collaborative effort, but I recognise my hand in more of this than others. A knife, clean and bright, whistling high and whistling right. A frog, empty as the day it was conceived. A black day, a good day, ? Nay, this was the day of promises broken, of the unsaid spoken, of electrical token and closed doors opened. The knife, the frog, they met, but how? With swish and swash of glinting metal. Remember ye, remember this. And then this is very much, for me, the crux of the piece. And I think it's a lot like, I don't know, the beauty is truth and truth beauty, kind of that vibe.
I am ready.
The teeth of death, they move so quick, and frogs, they can but jump. So that's very much the key line there. Obviously, the whole thing's bullshit, and I have no idea what it was.
Not
even
a clue.
It would probably pertain to some then joke that I've since forgotten.
Right.
But the response was just delightful, really. Dragon 2012, referring to the fact that Ben Gordon was an aged character, just said, oh, it has some great qualities, old timer. Which is just such a lovely phrasing.
Old timer.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's like we've
beautiful.
met him at like a dive bar off some kind of long freeway. Ears to hear you, says, bravo, fellow metaphor writer. I laughed my ass off
Fuck
at
off.
your cleverness and wit. And then this 3-word expression is just, if I didn't know like the preceding context of this person clearly being a bit of an idiot, but lovely, but an idiot, saying fellow metaphor writer, then this would just be the most patronising thing to say to anyone who has ever engaged in the written word. Way to write. Isn't that stupid? Oh dear.
Oh, that's such a shame.
I'll just read you the 2 other comments because
Go right ahead.
they're also great.
I want to know.
Poet Don't Know It, whose profile picture is some kind of, it looks like an angel fucking a unicorn, but I doubt what it is.
Okay.
I'm sure there's more there. Boing, been penning for 73 years, Hut. Doesn't penning sound like a verb for some kind of illegal
Father Peter.
action? Yeah. You've got the penner's car then, have you? Well, I can truly tell, for you have a true talent. I love the humour you intertwine throughout your poetic piece. You really sound like a hoot, and boy would I like to swap some tales with you. Boing! All caps, 5 exclamation marks. And from now on it's all in caps. P.S. No warts were got as I read your poem. Poet Don't Know It, writing it her own way. 7 ellipsis.
I want to end every single comment that I ever leave anywhere with all caps boing from now on.
It does. It has a great like. It's like Exeunt, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like you left. You just Declan out.
Boing.
And then the final comment from Ellis is
Oh,
one
we
more
should
confusing one.
we should probably say before then that that's quite similar to a tweet that was left about a recent production of Romeo and Juliet that we knew about.
shan't necessarily discuss in too much detail
No.
for fear of reprisal.
But someone left a tweet sort of of a positive review of the show, and the general crux of their message was all very positive, saying it was great. And then because the premise of the show was that it was Romeo and Juliet, but they're all footballers, don't ask. They just
Think how
ended,
much sense you think that would make, and then sort of subtract about 50%.
they'd ended their tweet with all caps followed by an exclamation mark. Goal!
It was just the stupidest end. It was so lovely though.
For the
so we
next-
adopted that.
For the next month, everything we ever sent, anything good or anything bad that happened between
Yeah,
us
preferably bad.
was just goal!
Declan's phone's been stolen again.
Goal!
Ellis, and also there's a goal sticker on Facebook, which is like GOL.
Oh
What is
yeah,
that, Spanish?
goal! Yeah,
Yeah, it's great. Ellis,
I'm sure.
his profile picture.
I'm sure our listeners are glad that I pronounced GOL for them.
It was good of you, actually. Thank you. It's just one of the services we provide on the educational program. that is
Anytime,
That's a
guys.
Shame.
Anytime.
Ellis, I think her profile picture is of a book of poetry that Ellis themselves are working on,
Wow,
and it has the
that is impressive.
inauspicious kind of, it's not pitching above its weight title of rhyming poetry with Ellis.
Right.
So it's like it's
Okay.
concentrating on one element of poetry,
Yeah.
there, and then maybe the rest will come later. I am the frog, and the frog is brackets burp, tiki cat emoji, world's greatest cat poet, which reminds me of Dog Blog, which we should mention.
Oh yeah,
Get that beer out of my bathtub. Aren't you the sly one? Talk about an inspired metaphor. And then you're like this. Masterful hops to mind. Ribbit, XOX, Phyllis, XOX. So, as you can see, it's a whole world of baffling individuals. All of them lovely. All of them very supportive. And, like, ultimately, they're all just having a good time writing little poems, commenting on a combination of poems and nonsense about frogs that I've spewed out of the ether.
definitely.
And it was this kind of basic concept that has stuck with me ever since. There's a certain delight, I think, in ingratiating yourself in a community that is so outside what you're used to.
Oh yeah,
Because prior to stumbling upon websites like All Poetry or Christian Chat, you just don't really, it would never cross your mind that there are so many people engaged in such a fringe activity for whom this is like a huge part of their life.
this is it.
It's like a big part of their day. They would like log on, update, like they have friendship groups on there, so they'll be like checking out which of their hundreds of friends have written a new poem today and getting their comments in. Like they take it really seriously. And this led us on, although maybe we should talk about the Dog Blog first before we forget.
Oh yeah, well, I was tasked back when we were at university with writing a review for one of the student newspapers of a play that was taking place, and it wasn't taking place through the Drama Society. It was like an independent production by some students, and it happened to have been written by someone that you sort of knew or you knew of.
Well, I'd been in a
you'd-
play
oh,
of
yeah,
hers
that was
with
it.
my good friend Greg. We did a radio play.
Oh yes.
I'm sure I have a recording of it as well,
Good.
so we can do something with that one day.
Yep.
I mean, I'm excellent in it, let's be honest.
Of course.
I'm really... Greg, though. Greg is actually amazing in it. I don't know why Greg wanted to do it, because I don't think he'd done any acting before or since, and you know Greg. You've met him a few
yep.
times. He's not the most kind of eminently outgoing person.
No.
He's one of these people that you always want to sit next to at, like, dinner, because he's going to say the funniest thing.
Oh, without doubt.
Basically only to himself.
Yeah.
Like, you have to listen out for it. And but I convinced him to come and audition for this thing, and she gave us the part straight away. We auditioned at like 11 o'clock at night as well, which was odd.
Good.
And Greg sort of multi-rolled a few characters, one of whom I've only just remembered was some kind of the ghost of a Scottish executioner. And if I can find the audio, I'll put it up somewhere because it was just the most incredible performance. So yeah, I knew this person from previous work.
And what were your thoughts going in? Because I didn't know. I didn't know this person. I didn't know her.
Uh-huh.
All I knew was that the title of the show was, which was supposed to be some sort of pun on Wuthering Heights.
Mm-hmm. And did that not predispose you to enjoy?
It made me think that I was going to hate what was coming. But at the same time, you know, as I did with all my reviews, because I mean, let's be honest, I was dreading most of them that I ever did. I went in with an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how long were we in the first act?
Well, before that even, I'd just like to point out because I had a slightly different experience. I had not been intending to go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, and then I was called at a sort of last minute thing. And you know how it works when you're reviewing something, because I used to do like music writing for the same paper, so I got into gigs for free. That was the only reason I did it. Quite often I didn't then write up anything about them out of a kind of fundamental opposition to work. But yeah, so I knew the score, like it was outside of the drama society we were both part of, where you get a discount on entry. And because you were reviewing it, I was like, yeah, I'll come along. I want to say it was a £5.
It was a £5. It was a £5.
I've never resented the exchange of currency more, and I've had to pay for like a replacement passport in a stitch. So it was from already on a bad note for me.
Yeah.
From the offset, which was not helped by the fact that we went into a room, which in hindsight we probably should have seen earlier from the queue, of maybe an audience of 6-8 people.
Yeah.
In a stage, a really big stage by university standards, and seating for maybe 100, something like that.
Yeah. So
and we were right by the tech as well.
Yeah. Let's not call it the tech.
Oh, the laptop.
Yeah, that's the one. We were in the first act of this for an hour.
At least.
Like,
I think
least.
you might be under.
Really?
The mark. I think it was longer, yeah.
Oh dear. So, okay. Yeah. I think maybe the last act was shortest.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first, certainly the second act. But yeah, about an hour and 15 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
We came out for the first interval. We just
I'd forgotten there was more than one interval.
We stormed out of the building and stood in the rain and just wept with laughter, because it was
confusion as well.
It was the maddest, worst thing that I'd ever seen.
It was, for me, the most singular theatre going experience of my life.
Oh,
and it's a real shame in a way that we have brought it up, because there are very few things about which I would say I could not do any justice to the description of what it was like to be there, because the whole basis of a podcast is like us trying to describe things that are in our heads to people who are listening. There is no possible way I could convey the sheer bewilderment mixed with a kind of painful suppression of every emotion you could experience as a person, on the basis that you're one of about 6 people in a room with some actors doing their best, with one of the most baffling scripts and just confusing efforts I've ever seen. And also while the director and writer of the play was like maybe 2 feet behind us. So there were bits that were like so mad that I couldn't process it. And like it would be 5 minutes if I were by myself of just bewildered laughter. But holding that in for so long was just agony. It
was like, it hurt. And we had no idea what to do. Like I had to convince you. I think I had to beg you to stay, I think.
I wanted to go and just roll down a big hill.
Because I
think about life.
I felt a sort of professional integrity that I should stay for the end. If only because I knew I was going to have to write the world's harshest review.
Yeah.
of this play, and I couldn't justify doing that if I didn't stay to watch all of it. So we headed back inside, and we were waiting to go back in for the second act. And one of the women who is waiting to go in also was like an older Scottish lady who it turned out
Who was clearly not a student, so
No.
that was why she stood out.
Yeah, she turned out she was the mother of one of the people in the play.
Mm-hmm.
And
A man comprised, as I recall, entirely of circles.
Yeah. And she was talking to someone in the queue about how her...
It's
Okay. This sounds like we were just high. It's like
it does a bit,
the sad thing. But she was just talking to someone else, and she was like, "Oh yes, my dog has a blog."
And I think at the time we were talking,
Yeah.
but I think we both assumed in our own heads. I won't bring it up because
No.
I probably misheard that.
Yeah.
Because I've lived on Earth now for some 20 years and never had the concept of dog and blog been so hand in hand. So I'll just put it down to an anomaly. Maybe my brain just broke briefly.
We left it. We watched the end of this play. Again, like, it was just atrocious. There are a couple of members of the cast who did, well with what they had.
Yeah.
Because what they had was dross. Like, unforgivable.
It's worth mentioning though that this is an award-winning playwright then and since, like, has gone on to be pretty successful.
Yeah.
Direct and had productions on, like professional productions. It's just that this play in particular,
Was the worst thing.
there were bits that were, what was interesting to me, it's not like watching The Room or something where you have a kind of one note experience of what like the apex of bad film is like. The problems and the badness came in every conceivable guise.
Yeah.
Ranging from just purely like, you could not write this in a sitcom better, moments where one character is alone on stage for maybe, it felt like about 9 hours, but it was probably about 15 minutes, sitting at a table, centre stage, right at the front, on a phone call, and to play this phone call out rather than just writing dialogue that, informed the audience as to what the other side of the phone call might be saying.
Or dare I say it, just have someone read the lines from off stage.
Yep, which actually ended up happening a little bit.
Yep.
They had created this cumbersome system of just playing sound files through iTunes one at a time, in theory, as the responses. So this had to be done live, and it was being teched by the writer, director, and now tech person. And I think maybe 3 out of probably about 100 of the responses came in at the right time. So the actress would be talking, and then the mother character would just cut in this abrasive Scottish accent. There was one line she kept saying. Oh, what was it? It was like space. I've got a space something.
Oh.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
Damn, it's
Oh
something.
my god.
I can remember the cadence of it, but not the content. Yeah. It was like, but it was a line that made no sense. It was something like, "There's a space cow." Or
Yeah,
something
I was
in
thinking
that
cow
vein.
as well.
It could be that. And that line came in at about maybe 30 seconds into the conversation with no context. Like, they were talking about her mental health, and suddenly she starts talking about Space Cow, which actually
I've got a space
accidentally
farm?
made it sound... Yes, I think Space Farm.
Yes.
I've accidentally, by putting mental health with Space Farm, made it sound like it makes more sense than it did.
Yeah.
It made no sense. It was about 8,000 times louder than any of the actors, and it just kept coming back. So she'd be like, "Anyway, Mum, so I just don't know how things are working out with you."
space farm.
But anyway, Mum, it's just Heathcliff or whatever this character's called that is supposed to be a vague.
Space farm. Space farm.
But all right, Mum. No, I know about that, but you're not supposed to say that for another 20 minutes. It eventually came ham-fistedly into the conversation in a way that still made little sense. So there were moments that were just like, that is school assembly. Like, you're sent out for giggling too much.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was like, I would have lost it with laughter, if not out of. And in hindsight, I'm really going to praise us for maintaining our composure.
We
because
did.
It would have been really mean to laugh.
We did
and I think
so
we did
well.
really well not to.
We did.
Like-
We didn't laugh once. I mean, I cried. I cried.
I
for
felt like I
most
was
of it.
laughing inside my lungs.
My
Which were then
all of
sore.
my viscera were just shaking. They were just vibrating.
Yeah,
From
I felt like I
holding
had
back.
rib pain, like I'd hurt muscles, intercostal muscles I didn't know I had
Yep.
by the end of this show.
There were
So there were moments like that, but then there were moments like, tell us about the famous washing scene. One of the most harrowing things I've ever witnessed.
well, so the main heroine gets locked in an attic by this man made of spheres, and he turns out to be an absolute, I don't know, like Father Peter figure. Like
Pretty
he's
much.
It's
a real theme.
yeah, in the show, and he kept like coming back into the attic and preying on her. But then there was this one scene where he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna wash you," and
That was about as much context as well. Like he's not underselling it.
it lasted for 10 minutes of no dialogue, of him
well, nothing.
undressing a woman who is disproportionately more attractive than him by such a phenomenal extent that it instantly made it far creepier than it might have been. Because you could tell that he was waiting for this scene, like every night, every rehearsal. You could tell he couldn't wait.
Cracking his knuckles,
And the poor
practicing his wrist action.
and the poor girl like just has to stand there while she's stripped down to her underwear and then violently washed
Clothed.
with a sponge.
It was horrid.
It was the
and
most-
there's a kind of convention in student theatre as well that, or at least there was at York, that you just don't really need to do that to students because they're not getting paid. Like you don't need to force someone to strip down to their underwear, or like even if the scene calls for, I don't know, some naked character to walk in, then it rarely happens because there are not many people. There's a very small Venn diagram union of people who are willing to act for no money and are also willing to take their clothes off in front of an audience. And I'm
For no
afraid
money.
that almost all of the people are perverts who fall into the
who
middle.
are ugly as sin, Thorpe Park dwelling bastards. But even less than students being undressed for scenes, even less likely, less frequent. In fact, I'd never seen it anywhere but this show. Was the fact that he stripped her down to her underwear, undressed her, and this was at like the end of Act 1.
Yeah.
She never put a thread of clothing back on
a one.
for the remaining 2 hours of the show.
No, and it wasn't like
There was
a warm day.
There was no reason at all for it to happen. Like she was, it was
I
just,
could tell.
it was. I mean, 80% of the reason I stayed. But maybe they knew that. Maybe they were like, "Look,
Maybe they're onto you.
this is it." It did lead to one of the most unfortunate moments in stage history.
God, yeah. I
In that
forgot
she
about
was wearing plain white underwear and had a scene where she was sort of sat on the floor crying. And it turned out, in hindsight, to be the fact that there were lots of kind of like markings on the floor, like because it
I
was a
think
stage.
hadn't it been like the floor had been repainted or something?
No, it was that they had like loads of stage markings left from
okay.
where props and stuff were supposed to go for previous productions.
Uh-huh.
And one of them, sadly, one that she happened to be sat on, was bright red.
Well, no, you see, my memory has it slightly more troublingly an indiscernible mixture of dark brown and red.
I mean,
that
well-
created a kind of muddy bronze.
Well, I think it was that the floor itself was black
Uh-huh.
and what she was sat on was red.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we can leave it to the audience to work out the problem that ensued
But for the
when those two things collided.
but for the rest of the play,
Yeah,
the poor girl.
looked like she was suffering from like diverticulitis
It was-
at the very best.
Yeah, it was so, and it was just the real sadness of it was that it was so unnecessary because
Yeah, well,
she
there was
could
no-
just
no
have been
reason.
clothed.
And it had been like months had passed in the show.
Oh yeah, this was like
I think she
years
moved
down the
house.
road.
Yeah. I also want to just mention as well, as we've now delved fully into this show,
Yep.
the perhaps crowning moment for me, which was
The finale.
we've omitted to mention. Well,
David
fucking
Bowie's
off.
Heroes.
That's the one. So there was another character. Were there only 3 characters overall? Was it 3-hander?
No, there was your friend as well. She was in it briefly.
Who? Yeah, I do remember. Yes, I can't remember what character she was.
Who's going to be important in a minute as well.
So there was a character who was only visible to the lead of the show, the aforementioned underwear-wearing stalwart who soldiered on through several hours of nonsense. And he was a kind of Piero, like an invisible clown figure. Mm-hmm. And I can't, in describing him, I kind of want to give the audience a sense of what his role was, but couldn't really tell you. He seemed to exist mostly just to taunt or like give kind of loose advice, or in his greatest moment of all, involve himself in what was going to be, on paper, a memorable feel-good moment for the ages. It's one of those water cooler scenes in theatre where people will be the next day like, God, I just can't get that final scene out of
This was going to be, you know, the end of The Breakfast Club where he jumps up and punches the air and it freezes, and you have that iconic final image to leave on, and, you know, the music swells, and you just think, wow, you know, I've seen something. Mm-hmm. That is what this wasn't.
And to its credit, the seeds for this moment had been sown for quite some time.
For the last 3.5 hours.
Yeah. And what it was, it was kind of the empowering moment. So she's there in her underwear. She's post being washed furiously by a man comprised only of globes.
I think she had a small, like a wafer-thin kind of shawl on, and a couple of necklaces, like some beaded necklaces.
Oh, yeah, she had weird, like, huge necklaces, didn't she? That didn't really mean anything.
No.
Because do you remember, like, when we kept leaving for each interval, we'd come back and the stage was different, but only in a kind of spot the difference way. It had no bearing on the plot. So you'd just be sitting there like, why have they just moved that box like 3 feet to the right?
It was just something to keep you occupied, distract you from the actual play.
It's so weird. But yeah, so at the apex of this, the kind of suffering, she realises, like, enough is enough. I need to take this into my own hands, and starts to put in action events that will see her out of this miserable state, with the help of the Piero.
And also for the, I'm not even, again, I'm probably underestimating here. For the 1000th time in the show, David Bowie's Heroes started playing.
Yeah, so we got the really low, the intro was like quite low in the mix. Mm-hmm. It was quite quiet but brooding, like there was an intensity there. Good sound system in the venue. I seem to remember that we'd also been allowed the privilege of kind of a preview of hearing it just come from the laptop at different times by accident.
Well, also, I just remember that we were sat right at the back of the sort of like small bleachers that they had set up in there.
We're trying to hide, but there's no one to hide behind.
No. But this also happened to be exactly where they'd placed the speakers for this. So, so for us, it was just obnoxiously loud and coming from our feet.
It looked like we were doing a little protest.
Yeah.
People kept looking around like, who are these cunts?
Down with this sort of thing.
But yeah, so Heroes starts, right, the intro, that great guitar riff. And as it starts, in my memory, at least, the Piero is giving this like motivational, like, you've got to do it, you've got to just seize control, you can be the person you want to be, you can break out of this flimsy metaphor for wuthering heights. And she is on board. She's like, it's a really empowering moment. She grabs all this colourful jewellery and puts it on, and they're like dancing around. There's joy on the stage. The most motion you'd ever seen as the music builds and builds, and she's standing on this bed right at the end of it, and she goes to assume a victory position, like arms outstretched, and as she does
it's
so,
like,
Piero...
It's like that, you know, the Columbia Pictures logo, that sort of like standing there, bold, the sun
Aloft.
Bursting behind you. Except they
like
didn't,
a great pioneer.
Except they didn't have a sun, so what they had instead...
Student theatre, they had a spotlight, a big fuck-off spotlight that you could move, and he picks it up and he goes around to the front. Deep below, all the lights fade to black.
We hit the swell for the drop of the chorus.
And,
what's that?
Just pitch black, is it? because the spotlight hasn't turned on. So there she is, assuming this pose that she'd been told was the final motion of the scene, of that act. She had to stay
of the
in that
entire
pose.
play.
Oh, was that the very
This
last
was
minute?
it. This was the
Oh my
finale.
God. So she had to adopt and hold that position of victory, knowing that the light wasn't working, knowing that no one could really see what was going on, as the music just petered out and people were confused as to whether the play had just given up, whether God himself had sucked out all the light from the universe.
Had decided finally to intervene.
Three acts too late.
God knew what we didn't, which was that there were acts 4 through 7 still to come.
And in his infinite wisdom, did he smite down the spotlight?
Did the Dixon studio fall into darkness?
And then it was just this amazing, uncertainty where applause just comes like I don't know, like ripples from a really small stone,
but
really small and erratic.
As much of a ripple as you can have with 7 people clapping.
Which, let me tell you, is a small one. We barrelled out of that theatre faster than I've ever moved, and went immediately
to the bar.
Like we walked about half an hour into town.
No.
Cold.
What we did, we went to V Bar. No. This is important.
did we?
We went to the campus bar. It was jazz night. I remember it was a Monday. Good night for theatre, and we went and we got some drinks, and there was nowhere to sit because it was always packed in for jazz night, and we sat slumped opposite one another on the floor of a corridor, in silence. Then came the moment that changed everything. Isaac received a message from his friend who had been in the play.
Oh God, I forgot about this.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming tonight. I think that you were there with the guy who's doing the review.
Yeah.
Our director would like to know if she could have his number. She just wanted to get in touch with him about something. Well, never has an attempt at begging been so dismally veiled.
Blatantly transparent.
So I was like, absolutely, like, send her my number. Send her the number. So you sent it through.
Yeah.
And we were sat for a little while longer. Nothing came of it. We had a few more drinks, and we just decided to we had to go to town. We had to just go and get abysmally drunk because we were despondent. Like, this had broken us. And I think
we couldn't talk
this is how
it was such a weird experience.
Well, this is it. This is how I like think of it. I think of it as if we'd seen aliens, right? In that, you know what you've seen. You know that this is so singularly exceptional, so different, so indescribable. And you know that it was real. Like, you were there, you saw this. But you know that there's no way anything you ever say to anyone or to each other could ever justify it, could ever make them believe, could ever make them understand. Like, we begged people to go and see this, and nobody did. And thus we are some of the only dozen people ever to see this show in action.
Because I don't think it's been put on again or ever will.
No, hopefully not.
So we are the...
So that was
few
it.
survivors.
And we were just, we had to just go out. I want it said that this is not exaggeration. I was at the time in what was an 18-month relationship, and it ended a week after this because that night I didn't go round to see her. Right? Like, she got a project back for her degree, and she'd done really poorly on it. And she was like, "You need to come over," and I was like, "I'm not." I simply
There's no way of putting this to you.
There's no way you'll ever understand, but I cannot. So that's how sort of bad this was.
Take it seriously. I guess we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot a little with a boy who cried wolf situation, where, given that our whole brand is cynically complaining about fairly banal things,
I know
people. It's one of those things that people would just be like, even about plays that are absolutely fine, or even about anything that's fine, be like, "Oh my God, it was the worst thing ever. I had to sit through or hour and a half." And you'd be like, "No, it's not that.
It's nothing.
Not. Stop it. Stop comparing it."
So we were walking to town, and I got maybe the best text that I've ever received in my whole life, which was from the director, writer, techie, and it said, "Hi, Declan. I hear that you're writing the review for Noose. sorry that a couple of things went wrong tonight. Had a real cock up with the old tech. Anyway, I'd be happy to offer you 2 free tickets to come and see it tomorrow if you like. Well, I collapsed in the street with laughter.
Down the alley.
I couldn't breathe for the idea that the one consolation prize that she could offer me for having sat through 3.5 hours of drivel was a chance to see it again.
Come back to hell.
Isaac then started screaming about the fact that he'd had to pay a £5 to see it. At least I got it for free.
Twice. You're going to get him for free twice.
So I was
Fuck
like,
that.
I texted back and I was like, look, thanks. Thanks.
It's not
thanks
you,
for the offer.
it's me.
Thanks for the offer, but I don't feel as though the tech issues necessarily overshadowed anything that I wouldn't otherwise have been able to interpret anyway. So thanks very much. Feel free to hand them out, the free tickets to anyone else. But yeah, I think that I'm all set with what I've got.
I think your review started because it went through a few stages where you first sent me the review while I was at a party.
Yes.
I don't know why you went there. For me to go through. And
I hadn't been invited.
Oh, well, there you go. And I read through it. And, I mean, listeners will probably have the impression that I'm quite horrible. And I don't know, maybe I am. But even to me, I was like, you cannot publish this. It's going to destroy people emotionally. But I do remember that your review started with something like, student writing is very hit or miss.
Yeah.
And sadly, this was quite a miss.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about it was that I initially gave it no stars. And then you were at this party and you read it out to people there who knew the girl who'd written the show.
Yes.
And they were like, absolutely not. About 3 of them rang me and were like, you cannot send this in. They were like, this will end lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the opening line was, student writing is very hit or miss, and sadly, the latest piece from the lovely writer was quite a miss.
We should try and find the original 0-star review and get it out.
Yeah, I'll see if I don't know if I can find it anywhere, but
it'll be in our message history.
Yeah, probably. So
oh dear.
I took out a few of the harsher lines, and
did you give it 1 or 2 stars?
I gave it 1 star, and when the paper published it, they'd given it 2 stars.
Oh really?
They refused to give anything 1 star. But
because again, it's like they couldn't believe that it was a fair review.
But then what was interesting?
I'm here to say it was.
What was interesting was that the day after it was published, I received a text from someone from our course who is friends with the writer, saying, look, you said to her that you weren't going to write the review. I was supposed to be writing the review for this. And I was like, I literally never said any such thing. She was like, yes, she texted you and you said you weren't going to come and see it again, so someone else should write the review. I said, no. I said I wasn't going to come and see it again. Of course I wasn't going to go and see it again. It was dreadful. Dear. But I never ever said that I wasn't going to write the review. So I don't know what you're on about.
Relish the task.
So, and she persisted, and I just screenshotted the entirety of all of my communications that I've ever had with this person. to this day, still the same, which was her text to me, my reply, her reply. And I went, this is the whole of our interaction. That's it. Nowhere in there does it say that you're writing the review. So no, I'm not going to call them and retract it.
Oh, dear.
But that's the extent to which criticism is just not okay for university theatre. They just won't accept it.
Yeah, I don't know what my thoughts are on that. I think they should I think it's kind of disingenuous to pretend that you do. Yeah. I think they should just give up on reviewing stuff. Yeah. You should just not review student performance because you can't say anything mean about it, even if it's accurate. No one needs to be actively horrible, but if it can't take criticism, it's just kind of pointless. Yeah. Just one thing that I forgot to mention as well was that the Scottish woman whose dog has a blog. Well, 2 things. First, we discovered that.
Yeah, we did.
We'll maybe link to it depending on how easy it is to link it to what we're talking about. And the other thing was that while she was the mother of the Globe person, the only criticism that she had of the show was him. She said his accent was inauthentic. She was like really horrible about this man's Scottish accent. It's like, okay. The rest was fine though. You didn't mind that? Oh no, the washing scene was great. A real triumph.
Loved the rapey overtones.
It was dreadful. Oh. The dog actually hated it. He gave it 0 stars.
All of this is to say
that we'll have to discuss Christian chat further in a part 2, I think.
Yeah, oh, definitely. There's no way that we could get through all of what I have to say about it and all of what you have to say about it.
Because we haven't even led into... I'll close with a quick setup for where I was going by starting with all poetry.
Yes, go on.
So, after all poetry became tiresome and we stopped wanting to put that much effort in, we looked through one of the profiles of one of the people who'd commented, whose name was something like... And I've had a look for it, but I can't find it. It was... Basically, Jesus is the number one poet, or words to that effect.
Right.
I mean, let's leave that there. Can't really criticise that claim. Fair enough. And it turned out that most of their poems were thinly veiled advertisements for a website ingeniously called Chris Talk. Chris Talk. Christ Orc. So whilst I appreciate that it's quite a clever little elision of Christ and talk, it has the unfortunate effect of making either Chris talking or Christ orking, neither of which seem like particularly promising prospects. And Chris Talk was a kind of Christian chat 1.0. It was ahead of its time. It's since been decimated and shut down by authorities I could not speculate about, but it's vanished from the internet. And it was a curious place full of poets. Indeed, there were lots of spaces for us to write more poems, but with a particularly religious bent now. But it was also a place of community, and it was that community that kept us coming back for more. I think, having spoken, like, these are people that I've known now for 6 or 7 years, and even the ones that I haven't seen for like 3, it still comes up as a place that they would go on individually, like after the time that we'd all been doing it together. They're like, yeah, I was on it until like a few years ago when it shut down. Like, yeah, you as well. So it comes up as this place that we really learned something, because we came there, I guess, to kind of mock and deride and with poor intentions, but we were transformed by the power of that group of people and their madness into basically some of the key players in the Chris Talk scene. It was only natural then that after it shut down, an evolution, an exodus, if you will, had to take place, and it was to christianchat.com.
Now,
which we should talk about next week.
We will. However, I was talking to you before the show. I have a replacement phone.
Yes.
For Hooked. However, I've been unable to reach Order of the Foxtooth.
Oh no!
Thus far, so that's going to have to be my challenge for the rest of the day.
Yes.
So, in lieu of that, I have again found us some poetry.
Okay, and we've got a shame mail. Which should we do first?
Oh yeah, let's do shame mail first.
Yeah, it's just a quick one. It's from a Mrs. A. Delane. I wonder who that could be.
I feel it's my mother.
Hello, Declan and Isaac. That's the one. Hello, Declan and Isaac. I was listening to episode 21 yesterday and was getting very concerned that you were going to wrap up the debating topic without mentioning Robert's head shaking. I was very relieved as it became obvious that you were leading up to it. That, combined with the thank you guys, made me chuckle. Did I do justice to that delivery?
No, you've done that well.
Thank you. It stuck with me as a kind of, you know that bird from the old Cocoa Pops adverts?
Oh,
that always used to go,
Coco?
Yeah.
What does he say?
Coco monkey?
He used to go,
Coco monkey?
like that, and it's one of those annoying sounds that's just embedded in my consciousness. It's now been joined by, no, thank you guys.
Well, I'm glad to have given you more sleepless nights.
No, I'm not. I did pass on your invite to appear on the show, but alas, Declan was correct. He will not be coming on. This is, of course, the genius history teacher / master chemist who has declined. I said to him that I doubted he would be interested. I mean, that could be where you went wrong. You don't want to leave with, I doubt you'll be interested, but trust me, it doesn't work. And he just shook his head and muttered, yes, quite. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
It is a real shame, as I think he would be so good on radio. Anyway, keep up the good work, guys. Generous. Anyway, so that's our shame mail for this week. You can send your thoughts as ever to tass@shame.city.
Yes, thanks for carrying
thoughts,
the
feedback, questions.
thanks for carrying the torch there, Mum.
Yeah,
Always doing your best to help me in my endeavours.
yeah. Even if we couldn't convince Robert, whatever his name was, to come on.
No.
But yeah,
One
let's
day.
bring us out with some poetry.
Well, have I got a selection for you?
Is that the name of the volume?
I've got 3 things here. One troublesome,
Yep, good.
one mental,
Yep.
and one not a poem.
You've misled us.
So we'll start with troublesome, because I like to end on a higher note. This is from the Australian user Stabbo.
Stabbo? Oh dear. That sounds like Australian slang for going on a mad knife rampage. Going on a fucking
STABO.
stabbo.
User banned.
Yeah, well, for the knife rampage.
Interestingly, Butterfly712 likes this. And has left a comment, Stabbo, what a great poem. I really like that one.
Oh.
Well, I can only be worried about both. Because the poem is called God Just Won't Look.
Okay. I'm curious as to where it's going because it's an intriguing title that seems to kind of eschew some of the standard ideas about what God will and won't do.
I think the first line will clue you in. You are my taboo, my one and only pill. You are just that good. God just won't look at the filth I've become. God just won't look at the twisted mess I've become. But even though I'm still this way, I'm not afraid of you, because I don't make any excuse, because I want to be better for the reason itself. That is the end of the poem. That is it.
That's it. Stabbo. Did he write that in feces on the wall of a massacre?
What
That's terrifying.
Taboo?
I think it should be incumbent upon the owners of this forum to add next to like upvote, downvote, reply, a report to the authorities button that is a direct line to Batman or something.
Straight to Operation U-Tree.
Sort them out. If anyone called Stabbo ever entered my life in a meaningful way, I'm checking out.
We'll move on from Stabbo because I don't want to dwell on that for too long.
Yeah, please.
Jonathan 1, junior member, posted something titled Just a Bible Story.
Okay. Casual.
When I opened it up, there was no poem. It said, can anybody tell me some good story about the Bible? And
it's quite conceptual.
User Magenta, senior member, Rep Power 307.
Oh, wow.
Has responded in kind.
Get the fuck off the poetry forum.
Okay. No. Are you ready? I mean, he has sent 3 paragraphs of answer, followed by a table. I mean, I'm going to send you a link to this so you can put it on the site because there is an absolute wave of information in this post. But I liked his first paragraph. Hello, Jonathan. How are you this evening? Well, actually, it's almost midnight here. Anyways, have you read Genesis recently? It has quite a few stories in it, all of them quite fascinating. I love the storyline starting with Abraham and his descendants being the tribes of Israel, and Judah from the loins of Jacob, Abraham's grandson. Jacob was Joseph's father, and his brothers were exceedingly jealous of him because Jacob favoured him over his other older sons, since Joseph was the child of Rachel, who had been barren until she had Joseph. That's all one sentence.
Right.
His brothers conspired to kill Joseph, but instead they sold him to a caravan heading to Egypt.
Oh, yeah, I've made that mistake.
Where Joseph eventually was raised to be the second most powerful person in all the land and saved Egypt and the surrounding countries from famine. It was due to the success of the Israelites in Egypt that they were eventually enslaved for more than 400 years.
Great!
And then Moses enters the scene to demand of Pharaoh on behalf of God to, quote, let my people go.
Oh, no.
Imagine this sentence, due to the success that they were enslaved for more than 400
What
years.
does he mean by that?
They were so good, they just had to be stopped.
Yeah.
Yep. Each,
Well, that was nonsense.
Yep. So, but he's got more to come. So I suggest
That's a
that
shame.
everyone go to shame.city to check it out.
Yeah.
Then we come to what might be the best poem ever written,
Ooh.
and I mean that. And there's a point in this poem where I know that you're going to fall apart
Okay.
because you will know from the second that I read the title what it's going to be.
I'm so excited.
The title is The ABCs of Christianity.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, please, please,
Yes,
God.
it is.
If G is God.
No, wait for
Okay,
it.
no,
It's
I won't-
better
I
than
won't,
that. It's
preempt.
better than that. Here we go.
Oh, dear.
Amazingly beautiful calmness, doing everyone fellowship. God helping innocent Jesus. Kindness meaning nature, opposing people's quick rage. Smiling, teaching, unworthy. Visiting with X-ray yearning zealness.
Why have they done this? No, that's not allowed. There is definitely a character in the Bible beginning with X. Surely. Xanthi, isn't that a biblical name? Fucking idiot person. Could you just read me that last bit again? Because I laughed over the final.
It doesn't make any more sense. Kindness meaning nature, opposing people's quick rage, smiling,
Right.
teaching, unworthy, visiting with X-ray yearning zealness.
Zealness as
Yeah,
well.
I know.
Oh my God. That is a shame.
Farouk likes this.
Oh well, he oughtn't. Let me just tell you that for nothing. So look, more of this on our next episode, which of course when it releases. Oh no, I won't be there yet. I'll still be in the UK.
Yeah.
So don't get too excited, guys. Not that it affects any of you anyway, but I'll probably put up some nice pictures or something that you can have a look at. And I can only imagine, because I haven't been to Disneyland since I was like 6. I can only imagine that France's attempt at pretending to be happy 24/7 is at best transparent. And I'm half French, so I'm well versed in
You're
these
allowed
things.
to say that.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's just the case based on all my family.
Someone came over, a cousin of mine was here recently, and she was on the phone to someone, and whilst on the phone to them said, yeah, it was shit. They made us watch The Hunchback of Notre Dame, maybe the most boring film ever made.
What?
And I
Who is this?
I just left.
Traitor.
I didn't talk to her anymore. Apparently,
That's dreadful.
Mum tells me that after I left, she said that this extends to all Disney films.
Oh, right. So she's just an idiot.
Yeah.
Then. Right. Okay. I thought she was just had a wrong opinion, but
She's got a wrong
got a wrong
ideology.
mind. Well, that's a shame.
I know.
And this has been That's a Shame, episode 23. We didn't quite get around to our topic, but we didn't know at the time that we'd take
Oh my
quite the
God.
turn we did.
No.
And I'm glad we've got that story off our chests.
Yeah, I'm glad it's out there.
Yeah, we need more people. If you've got any experience, because I have a feeling this is a universal thing that people don't talk about too much, because there are a few things in my life that are like this, but none more so than the that play experience. If you've been involved in some event, some art, some kind of act of God that has been so singular to you that you've never really been able to tell anyone about it, try telling us about it, because we'll do our best to understand and
Oh yeah,
relay your story
absolutely.
on air.
No,
TAS@shame.city.
we're all about that kind of solidarity.
Yeah, we love it. Give us some more plugs, why don't you?
Well, we are very close to reaching 1,000 followers on
Yes.
Twitter.
That is devastatingly exciting,
And
and,
if-
also a bit of an insult because our podcast account, now going for 23 episodes, has exceeded my own Twitter going for about 7 years. But that's fine, whatever.
Oh, well, don't worry, it's already 3 times mine. So,
Okay, that's right.
so yeah, if you would like to be in with a chance of being our 1,000th follower, if you haven't
maybe-
already,
We will do something for our 1,000th follower.
Absolutely.
However, the caveat is this: it's going to have to be like after a week. We'll look at who the 1,000th follower was.
yeah,
We'll look at who it was, and then if they're still following after a week, then we'll keep it. 'Cause I'm not having any of this unfollow bullshit. Yeah, fuck that.
We're the only people who can do that.
Yeah,
That's ours.
but yeah, at That's a Shamecast.
Definitely.
I don't know what you'll get, but it will be delicious.
If you'd like to boost either of our individual egos, then you can follow
Always in the-
Isaac at IsaacBD or myself at Cynical Declan.
True.
As we've said, you can email us, tass@shame.city.
For our Shame Mail segment, which is like a regular thing now.
Definitely.
So we'll keep doing it as long as you keep being in touch.
And next week, I think I'm going to go ahead and say for us, next Friday,
Yeah.
if you're on the mailing list,
Ooh. That's when it's shipping.
that's when it's shipping.
Bonus
You
episode
will
will be
get-
winging its way.
You will get a bonus episode, a link to a bonus episode, I think.
It's going to be like an after dark, like That's a Shame at midnight version where we're just like our true selves. This is all an act. I'm actually Welsh.
Yeah. So yeah, if you like that, and of course, like once we have more people on the mailing list, it will become a more regularly
Yeah.
interacted with body of
It's
people.
going to be great fun all around. Shame.city/mail for that.
Yes.
Of course, Shame.city is your hub for all things shame. You have your show notes, which is usually just like a picture and a link to some stuff we've talked about. Declan's debating will be on there one day.
Yes. I've got the DVD
it's-
here.
I've started writing an article about true crime, so that'll
Oh,
be there in the next
fantastic.
2 or 3 years.
Yep.
But yeah, this has been a blast. I'm glad we got all of this out into the open. I feel a real weight lifted off my
I
chest.
feel a lot better.
Yeah. Episode 23, who knew? What fun. We'll see you on Sunday. Thanks for coming.
See you then, guys.
Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean the bare necessities, oh Mother Nature's recipes that bring the bare necessities of life. Wherever I wander, wherever I roam, I couldn't be fonder of my big home. The bees are buzzing in the tree to make some honey just for me. The bare necessities of life will come to you. Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean the bare necessities, oh Mother Nature's recipes that bring the bare necessities of life. Wherever I wander, wherever I roam, I couldn't be fonder, my new home. The bees are buzzing in the tree to make some honey just for me. The bare necessities of life will come to you. The necessity